Hi Year 2, I hope you had fun doing the acting with our last part of the story. And our next part today, we're going to carry on and I'll tell you about the activity afterwards. I'm going to read a bit more of it today. So we left off here. Remember that page. Okay. Suddenly, directly in front of him, little Billy saw the trunk of an enormous tree. This tree was different from all the others because it had branches hanging down very low. While still running, he made a frantic jump for its lowest branch. He caught it and pulled himself up. Then he grabbed the next branch above his head and pulled himself up again, then again and again, climbing higher and higher to get away from the terrible, snorting, smoke-blowing, smelly breath beast down below. He stopped climbing, only when he was too exhausted to climb any higher. He looked up, but even now he couldn't see the top of the giant tree. It seemed to go on forever. He looked down. He couldn't see the ground either. He was in a world of green leaves and thick, smooth branches with no earth or sky in sight. The snorting, smelly, smoke-blowing beast was miles away down below somewhere. He couldn't even hear it anymore. Little Billy found a comfortable place where two big branches came together and he sat down to rest. For the moment, at any rate, he was safe. Then something very peculiar happened. There was a huge, smooth branch very close to where little Billy was sitting, and he suddenly noticed that a small square patch of bark on this branch was beginning to move. It was a very small patch, about the size of a postage stamp, and the two sides of it seemed to be splitting down the middle and opening slowly outwards, like a pair of shutters on some tiny window. Little Billy sat staring at this extraordinary thing, and all at once a strange, uncomfortable feeling came over him. It felt as though the tree he was sitting in and the green leaves all around him belonged to another world altogether, and that he was a trespasser who had no right to be where he was. He watched intently as the tiny shutters of tree bark opened wider and wider, and when they were fully open, and they revealed a small squarish window set neatly in the curve of the big branch. There was some sort of yellowish glow coming from deep inside the window. The very next thing little Billy saw was a tiny face at the window. It had appeared suddenly from nowhere, and it was the face of an extremely old man with white hair. Little Billy could see this clearly, despite the fact that the whole of the tiny man's head was no larger than a pea. This ancient miniature face was staring straight at little Billy with the most severe expression on it. The skin on the face was deeply wrinkled all over, but the eyes were as bright as two stars. Now something even more peculiar began to happen. All around him, not only one on the huge main trunk of the tree, but also on all the big branches that grew out of it, other tiny windows were opening and tiny faces were peering out. Some of these faces belonged to men and others were clearly women. Here and there the head of a child was seen peering over a windowsill. The heads of these children were no larger than the heads of matchsticks. In the end, there must have been more than 20 small windows all around where little Billy was sitting, and from each window these amazing little faces were peering out. No sound came from any of the watchers. The faces were silent, unmoving, almost ghost-like. Now the tiny old man in the window nearest to Billy seemed to be saying something, but his voice was so soft and whispery. Little Billy had to lean right up close to catch his words. "You're a bit of a twizzler, aren't you?" the voice was saying. "You can't go down again, because if you do, you'll get guzzled up at once. But you can't possibly sit up there forever either." I know, little Billy gasped. "Don't shout," the tiny tiny man said. I'm not shouting, little Billy said. Talk softer, the man said. If you talk too loudly, your voice will blow me away. But who are you? Little Billy asked, taking care to speak very softly this time. We are the Minpins, the tiny man said, and we own this wood. I shall come closer, then you'll be able to hear me better. The old Minpin climbed out of his window and walked straight down the big, steeply sloping branch, then up another branch until he found a place only a few inches from little Billy's face. It was amazing to see him walking up and down these almost vertical branches without the slightest trouble. It was like seeing someone walking up and down a wall. How on earth do you do that? Little Billy asked. Suction boots, the man said. We all wear them. You can't live in trees without suction boots. On his feet he was wearing tiny green boots rather like miniature wellies. His clothes were curiously old-fashioned, mostly brown and black, the sort of thing people wore 200 or 300 years ago. Suddenly all the other Minpin men, women and children were climbing out of the windows and making their way towards little Billy. Their suction boots seemed to allow them to walk up and down the steepest branches with the greatest ease, and some were even walking upside down, underneath the branches. All of them were wearing these old-fashioned clothes from hundreds of years ago, and several had on very peculiar hats and bonnets. They stood or sat in groups on all the branches around little Billy, staring at him as though he was someone from outer space. But do all of you actually live inside the tree? Little Billy asked the old Minpin. All of the trees in the forest are hollow, not just this one, but all of them, and inside them thousands and thousands of Minpins are living. These great trees are filled with rooms and staircases, not just in the big main trunk, but in most of the other branches as well. This is a Minpin forest, and it's not the only one in England. Can I peep inside? Little Billy said. Of course, the old Minpin said. Put your eye close to that window. He pointed to the one he'd just come out of. All the Minpins coming out round the edge there. Little Billy shifted his position and placed one eye right up against the square hole that was no bigger than a postage stamp. What he now saw was quite marvellous. He saw a room that was lit by a pale yellow light of some sort, and it was furnished with beautifully made miniature chairs and a table. To one side was a four-poster bed. It was like one of the rooms little Billy had once seen in the Queen's doll's house at Windsor Castle. It's beautiful, little Billy said. Are they all as lovely as this one? Most are smaller, the old Minpin said. This one is very grand because I'm the ruler of this tree. My name is Don Minnie. What is yours? Mine is Little Billy, little Billy said. Greetings, little Billy, Don Minnie said. You are welcome to look into some of the other rooms if you wish. We are very proud of them. All the other Minpins families wanted to show little Billy their own rooms. They rushed about the long branches calling out, Come and see mine, please! Come and see mine! Little Billy began climbing about and peeping into the tiny windows. Through one window he saw a bathroom, just like his own at home, only 1,000 times smaller. And through another he saw a classroom with lots of tiny desks and a blackboard at one end. In every room there was a stairway in one corner leading up to the room above. As little Billy went from window to window, the Minpins followed him, clustering round and smiling at him at his exclamations of wonder. They're all absolutely marvellous, he said. They're much nicer than our rooms at home. Okay, right, we are going to stop there. Now, your task this time is to design your very own Minpin. Now, you might want to base it on the Minpins in the story. Like it did say they had old-fashioned clothes. Now these clothes sounded a bit like the clothes that we wore for Great Proud London Day, because they had bonnets and they were from a long time ago. So maybe your Minpin will look like that. They also said they had special suction boots to walk up and down the trees. Maybe your Minpin would be like that. You might want to base your Minpin on a member of your family or a friend or yourself. Okay, so I have done one for us. I based mine on myself. I've given it a title, a Minpin called Mrs. Henty. So I was using my new name, Mrs. Henty. And I've drawn a picture a bit like me. I've done my best with the drawing. I didn't go for old-fashioned clothes, but I did put suction boots on. And then I've done lots of labels, and I've thought about using adjectives. So I've got blue eyes, smaller than a mouse, that's a good one, bright lips, long dark hair, pale skin, grey suction boots. So I've tried to be adventurous. Okay. And then at the bottom I've then put a little bit about personality, so what they're like inside. So her personality is caring, fun and a little bit weird. And I've put a comma there because it's a list of 3 things. Okay, so you can colour it in and design your very own Minpin. Okay guys, I will be back to read the next part of the story. I hope you enjoyed designing your Minpin. Okay, bye!